Welcome to the latest episode of Platform. Today, we're going to be speaking to Dominic Bruce. I've known Dom for over a decade, I'm going to say. I've known him since he was basically a short teenager rolling around on, I think he had rollerblade troopers or something at the time when I first met him. Since that time, he has gone on to star in a lot of really interesting projects, such as Haitian Reincarnation, Pappies by Greg Preston. He was also in Inti by Haitian and Haitian's most recent video, which I think is pronounced Ishide or Ishid or something like that, that was filmed in the Canary Islands. Since that time, he has gone from skating for SSM to joining Razors, and he's actually turned pro for Razors. He released a pro edit, I think it was either last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. He's also done really well in competitions. He won the Winter Clash under 18s and has placed in the top 3 at Winter Clash, I think twice now. He came third last year before coronavirus kicked in. Most recently, he's just had a section in David Sizemore's video, Fifth Floor, which he finished off the video, which is a testament in itself. And it's probably his best skating today. I think David did the best job that anyone's done of capturing Dom's kind of frantic, unusual approach to skating. He just has a really good eye for interesting tricks and combos and can just manage to make an obstacle skatable when most people can't. If you haven't seen it yet, I thoroughly recommend you do. Hanging about with Dom is always a really good laugh. We always just get into some kind of like weird debates, especially online over message. We'll have just the strangest DM conversations where he'll just argue a contrary point to whatever statement I make, and then we'll just go into this weird rabbit hole of arguing about language and debating like what certain words mean or what certain ideas are. So I'm predicting that at some point in this interview, he is either going to challenge me and be incredibly pedantic, or at one point he's going to turn it on me and just start asking me questions just to mess with me, because that's just the relationship that we have. Like I said, really big fan of Dom. I'm really excited that the world's finally getting to see what a bunch of us already knew for a very long time, and that he is one of the best and one of the most interesting street skaters we have at the moment. Before we do that though, cue the music. How you doing, handsome?
Fine. Are we in motion? Are we in?
We're never not in motion if you think about it.
Have we begun?
We've begun.
Cool. Well, welcome to my my frog pad.
I like it. I got dressed up for you. I decided.
Just love it. I also got a bit dressed up. I just put on some colors.
Like it. Tie-dye and frogs. What more can you ask for?
Tie-dye myself kind of matches the frog.
Yeah.
Shout out Donata Castle, Stunhaven represent.
Yes, the most Scottish blading podcast of all time. I was just remembering when I was setting this up. Do you remember the last time we were in physical proximity to each other?
Winter Clash.
But do you remember when at Winter Clash?
In the blue collar.
It was the final day, and you'd just spent the evening sleeping on a floor with several individuals, and that became quite an interesting evening. I was laughing so hard setting this up, just being like, oh God, totally forgot about that.
Let's just say that it was like this.
Yeah, I think the less we say about that evening, the better for everyone concerned. But yeah.
That wasn't my best night's sleep, I gotta be honest.
I don't think it was anyone's best night's sleep. Let's move swiftly on, shall we? So, how you been?
I'm fine. I'm feeling good. It's taken a few days since, the last few days I've been kind of like distant. I felt a bit mentally distant because I just like got a lot of messages and stuff and didn't know how to respond. But I've actually today And last night started to sink into it a bit more and like read some of the messages that I've got off the back of releasing Fifth Floor with David, and just like so many amazing messages. So feel good from that. It's really nice for people to reach out and tell us what they think about the video.
I imagine it must have been flooding in, because the amount of people that messaged me just to be like, "Have you seen Dom's part?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, of course, I've watched it. It's the day it came out." And yeah, a lot of people were very, very impressed. So I can only imagine how many messages you were getting. That it must have been, yeah, flooding in.
Mm. Yeah, it was. I'm just going to hide my self view because I don't. That's better. Now I'm seeing only you. But yeah, it's been just like when we released it, I think, or before the video had even finished, when we were sitting watching it, when it first got premiered on YouTube, there was already messages coming in. And, you know, I don't want to just reply with like with an emoji, but at some point you just feel like you don't know what to say to everyone, because it's just like, you know, and
Yeah.
I really, yeah, I'm really humbled by it. I've worked really hard on this with David. We've all put in a lot of energy to this, and it's been over the course of 3 years. In a way, it's just a continuation of Blaze, the last video we did, because
Yeah.
there's one or two of the clips in my section at least are from the period of filming for Blazed, and then we just carried them over into this. So Blazed was kind of this, you know, we dropped that as a 3-minute sort of edit, and then we had some clips we were still sitting on, but we weren't immediately like, let's film another video. We just kept on filming, and then at some point we were like, okay, we've got enough clips here to make something.
Everyone's like, "David, are you gonna release this stuff anytime soon?" And he's like, "Well, actually, I've been thinking about this."
Yeah,
He's like, I've got a plan."
he's just been like a bird sitting on the eggs, you know, and he's just like, at some point he was like, okay, I want to make a 5-minute sort of video maximum, like maybe 5 minutes, and just like, and I was like, okay. But then we kept on filming, and it was something like, okay, maybe we'll make it 7 or 8 minutes, and then it was shifted, and it was nearly 15 minutes, and then we were like, okay, 15-minute video, Winter Clash 2020, we'll be releasing it. And then we're like, no, let's keep on filming for another, at least until the summer. And then we just were like, okay, it just went on, and we stopped filming in around September last year.
Okay.
And then there's been different difficulties we've encountered with music and copyrights and finding the right track. And Dave, like, also just for David, like we're out there skating and collecting footage, and we're all at the session, putting in energy. But David's the one who's weightlifting that camera around with him, and then taking it home and having to find the time to sit with those clips. He's probably seen each of those singular clips 100 times each, because David's so meticulous. And in between his job, he works really hard, and is, often the way David's job works is he does like block periods. So for 2 weeks he's super busy, and then he has like a week off. So it's been kind of on and off the way he's been able to focus on it. But I could just tell, and like, just finally having that released on Saturday, we all had a beer together, and we were just, yeah, it was a feeling of relief, and also just like, yeah, it's out now. It's
yeah, I can imagine, because David's, well, from what I've observed, really obsessive. Because I remember when he filmed Chris Smith's part, and they basically spent months trying to get copyright for the song, and then they couldn't get it, and that's why they decided not to sell it, because they were like, because David likes to obviously do everything like legit and have everything done proper. And then it turns out they didn't actually have to worry about the copyright, because it wasn't an official song, it was a remix, and they were trying to get rights for a song that they didn't actually need rights for. I can only imagine the attention to detail he put into it.
Yeah, I mean, he did that for another song, the Dean Coward section. I don't know if you remember, he did a section.
Yeah, the Shangri-La one. Yeah, remember that. Yeah.
Then he paid for the rights for that music, where he bought those songs. Abner J, I'm So Depressed. I think he got in contact with the person who owns the rights to the songs, and I think it was actually a family member, if I remember rightly. And yeah, David is, there's no one, I've never ever worked with someone like David and he's a friend, you know, I skate with him like I would anyone else. We go for sessions together and stuff. But when the camera gets involved and we're skating like that, I've never filmed with someone where you feel so much like it's just done so proper in a way where I feel like skating feels very real when you're out skating with David, if that makes sense. It's just like I feel like for if skating is like a real job or a lifestyle, then I feel it most when I'm out skating with David filming, because it feels like it's just there's no cutting corners. It's done properly. There's second angles. And I've developed a new kind of patience for filming from working with David. And I was the sort of person before who would, if you go on YouTube, most of my edits are filmed in a day.
Yeah, I remember all those very well. Yeah.
Like most of my edits are like filmed in either a 3-hour skate park session or like a day with Dom style thing. And to work on something for at least 2 years and like focus on it like that has been a whole new experience. Because my other stuff as well has mainly been on skate trips where it's like concentrated, like 3 weeks we go to Peru or we go to Tenerife and there's like intense focus on skating for that period of time. But this section to me means so much beyond the skating. Like personally in my life, it's like there's been so much things happen to me in the process of filming this. So it's also a story for me when I watch the section. It's encapsulating a period of my life, because throughout all the things that have happened, we've just kept this thread of the video.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference there, that it has like more of an emotional depth because it's filmed over a longer period of time. So there's been more changes take place and there's been seasons come and go. And there's also, you can see it, I've went through like so many styles in that video.
Yeah, there's a lot of wildly different Dom Bruce looks in that. Yeah, that's quite true. Yeah, it's like a kind of time capsule that, you know, when you're older you can look back on it and you'll be like, oh, I remember that, like that phase or like that period or doing that, and because there's quite a lot of like lifestyle footage in it as well, so it's not just, you won't just remember, oh, I don't really remember doing that trick or whatever, or I don't really remember being that day, because there's stuff where you guys are just hanging out on rooftops, or, you know, you go swimming, or you do, so it's other stuff that you'll have memories of outside of skating, like just hanging out and, you know, the conversations you had.
Totally. I think as a crew, as a group of skaters that and yeah, we see ourselves as a crew at this point. I think there was a period when we first moved to Copenhagen, like Quinny and David and I, that there was already something going on in Denmark. In Denmark, they had the Rad DK that used to do some cup events and stuff. And I just think to begin with, we started realizing who we wanted to skate with, and we made good close connection with like Christian and Core and Freddie and, you know, the local guys here. And, you know, I'm open for skating with everyone, but we found ourselves at sessions together so often that I think at some point the conversation came up, like, what do we identify this as? Like, what are we, a crew? Like, what should we give ourselves a name? Because that's somehow, like, you know, marks the spot a little bit. And then we couldn't find it for ages, and we went through other names. There was at one point speak of calling the crew Flatland, because we're, you know, living on a pancake city that's just got no hills. And then it was like, nah, it sounds too much like Flatland BMX and or flat. Yeah. You know, the connotations of Flatland I don't think were so good or so fitting. But then Fifth Floor came about as a reference to, in Copenhagen, the building standards. In Copenhagen, if you notice, you would notice most of the buildings are like 5 floors high.
Okay.
And in a lot of the clips, there's if you look in the background, we're kind of in the streets with the build, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, because in Copenhagen, there's no hills. You never get above the sort of city line. So you never see like a view of the city, really. You're always like, kind of you know, below the buildings.
Yeah, like submerged in it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But they're not they're not these overpowering buildings like you would be in, like in New York, where if you were under the buildings, you feel like dwarfed by the giant buildings. Because here it's the way the city's designed in a way where you feel like the buildings are not trying to take too much of the limelight. Like they're just like,
Yeah, you can still see outwards. You can still see like across the landscape or whatever. Yeah.
Or just like, there's space, there's kind of breathing space. But there was supposedly an old building standard that was that you couldn't build more than 5 floors high. And in Copenhagen, when you do get a chance to see the skyline, there's only few buildings, and it's been in the last 10 years, I guess, that have started to break through the skyline, like other than church spires and like some of those buildings. But most of the housing and stuff is in line with each other. So yeah, fifth floor came about from that idea. And I think that it's a nice idea, like a nice thought. Like I think we kind of use it when we're speaking, like, let's take it to the fifth floor. Like it's kind of like we reference it in different ways.
Yeah,
And
it's essentially like an internal joke between you guys now. Well, kind of like, yeah, almost. Plus, it's
like,
probably better that you didn't come up with a crew name, because let's be honest, they generally end up sounding really cheesy no matter who does it, and they don't age well. So it's probably for the best that you kept it nothing.
but I think to be honest, from now we're probably just going to relate to ourselves as fifth floor, just because I mean it came about naturally, and it was like there's a humor to it, So I think that it's not like I'm not going to be probably getting the tattoo fifth floor or die. I'm probably not. We're not probably not going to be. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. But it's definitely got something to it. And like Carl Benny, my roommate, my friend, he designed the.
Yeah, I remember you talking about it on Wax Toaster. Yeah,
exactly. So he designed that. So it's nice. So because like we've all been involved in the process. I sent lots of music to David, and not that it was used, and like, but we've all sent different requests. I know Palace sent music to David, Freddie, Greg. Big thank you to Greg for sending one of the tracks that was used in my section. So yeah, there's been a lot of help from friends in the making of it.
I was kind of surprised. I was really surprised by the end product, actually, in terms of the format, because when David announced that he was releasing it, I was like, all right, well, David's going to have a section in it. And then he mentioned Carl Lindbergh, who I'm a massive fan of, and then obviously you. And I was like, all right, cool. There's going to be 3 sections. And I spoke to Quinny about it, and he was like, yeah, I don't have that much in it because I just haven't had time. Unfortunately, he's like, I would love to have had a full part, but it just didn't happen. And then when it came out, I was like, oh, David actually didn't put any attention on himself at all. Like, he very much just gave you two the stage. And then he's just got like a sprinkling of clips throughout it. And the clips that he does have are immense. Like the what's it, like Fakey 720, where I grabbed mute like most of the rotation on a big set and like soloing off, weird things coming off riffs and stuff. So
the true top porn he did on the rail with the disconnect in the middle, like it's 2 separate rails, and he does like an alley-oop true top porn, and he just kind of, he doesn't even hop it, he just kind of bumps over the rail. If you look back, you'll see that one.
That's another thing about the video. Every time I watch it, you notice new things. So that's probably just one of those things I haven't actually noticed yet. But I did think it was really cool that despite the fact it's his video, he very much doesn't make it about him. It's absolutely about other people, which I thought was really cool.
I mean, some people create like wheel companies or clothing companies just to be able to get the sponsor they never got offered, and stuff like that happens frequently. But David is so proper and thoughtful and passionate, the way he handles skating. And David could have easily had like I think David's probably sitting on a whole file of clips that he didn't use. David could have easily, put more of his stuff in there, but he's just, I can't thank David enough for the way that he's supported me through the process of filming this. Like, he really wanted to make this like one that stands out for me, and he really wanted Core to have a section as well, and that was the way that it was modeled, that it was like Core and I with like full sections and then montages throughout. And I think that some people, in the way that we did the run up to it and the way that the promotion was done, I think some people probably thought that we all had sections because it was posted like.
I think that's it, because it like named people. You suddenly have that expectation of being like, all right, that's who. Yeah, so I know what you mean.
I know there's a few people who've said they wish Carl Benny had more clips because he's not really ever released any footage. There's no one really ever seen Carl Benny skating, and then he just had a few clips in there. And
I liked the double, when you skate up to something and do like the double heel stall against the wall and then come back the way. That was very, those are deceptively difficult. Yeah, like the pushback. Yeah.
He's really good at those like he's got really strong legs. He's really good at the shoot the duck as well. Like, these like leg strength tricks.
Right. Okay.
I think the wall ride's very memorable. He does like a swing, like 1 foot roll.
Yeah,
swing
with no run up to wall ride. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's not good in the heels. Yeah, it paints it makes Copenhagen look like a very interesting, just exciting place to skate, which I think is one of the, if a skate video can do that, then that's an incredible thing. Like you used to get it with like old New York videos where they just make New York City look like the most fascinating place in the world, or like certain London videos, you'd just be like, oh God, that looks so vibrant. And I think it does that with Copenhagen. It gives you that kind of, it gives a good impression of how unique an environment it is. So
I think that is very specific. Like this video is specific to Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't make this video anywhere else. And I think David is good at expressing that too, because he has a love he moved here and he has an absolute love for Copenhagen. You should see how many pictures David takes. He has got a camera. You
get that impression. Yeah.
He's noticing details about, he notices details in the light and the way that light refracts off buildings and like, he's just like, yeah. And I think that you can see that in the video, the eye he has for the city, and also the how attentive David is to his friends. Like the way that David captures those lifestyle shots and the sort of, it's like he's really got his eye on his friends and what's going on in the group,
Yeah, I know what you mean. That was one of the things I said. I think it was Quinny I was messaging, and I was like, this is the closest anyone's ever come to capturing Dom's personality and the range of his skating ability. Because obviously you had a section in Reincarnation and that was really good, but it did feel like it was all just, it was like smash and grab, like what you got, whatever you were. And there were a few stunts in there, but it didn't show just how weird you can get on blades. And I don't think any section you've ever had has actually given an insight into your, like, how frantic you are on skates. Like I would describe your skating style as quite like, just, I don't really know like a term for it, but it's almost like sometimes when you skate towards an object, you're not skating, you're like running. It's like you're trying to get to it as fast as physically possible, and you're not doing like a standard skate technique. You're like, the legs are crossing over the entire time, and you're like, I'm getting there. And I think he's done a really good job of and portraying your thought process on it as well, because there's two sections where you can tell you're just figuring something out. There's one where it's like the block and you're doing like the cross-legged heel roll up it. And then there's a couple of tricks that you can tell that you were aiming for. And then there was ones that were just complete like freaks in your head. You're just obviously thinking on the spot. And then there's the one where you're jumping off the roof as well to do like the soul grind on the blocks.
Yeah.
My favorite one of that is where you come off fakie and like kick do like a fakie kick in the bollard thing. But then there's another one where you like grind round the square block and stuff like that. And I think he's done a really good job of showing this is how Dom's mind works. Like sometimes he's got an idea, sometimes he has an idea and it changes in the middle of the trick. And sometimes he just completely improvises it and this is what you end up with. And I think that's really clever.
I think you're spot on with that observation, because like I've never felt like someone understood or was able to capture my expression on skates the way David has. Because like when I watched it for the first time, I also thought it was funny that he kept those, he kind of left that he had those parts in the video where I have like 10 tries on something, because that is the sort of process. There's been sections in the past where I've done like the one I did with Cavan, for example. I had like a week to film that, And I just went out and we did tricks at spots, if you know, and I tried to get as creative as possible always, but it's just,
A
that's
week's
what
never
came from
enough.
that.
A week is never enough to
Yeah,
film a full section that shows off your entire range of ability. No one can do that.
there's more anxiety involved because you think that there's a time, the clock's ticking, and then you just want to grab what you can get.
Yeah.
And then you start sometimes lowering your quality control because you just want whatever is there.
Yeah, you don't want to dedicate like 2 or 3 hours to a trick, knowing that you're like, cool, I've just wasted half a day on this one spot. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I think that David has taught me that as well, the a bit like that quality control of just like, instead of having 3 clips, let's just focus on getting this one trick done properly, the way you want it to be. And yeah, that's sort of the way I work on skates. And I'd say this section specifically happened very spontaneously. Like most of the tricks kinda were like, I was as surprised as everyone else.
You can tell on a couple of occasions. Yeah, there's a couple of times your reaction when you land, you were like, I can't believe that just worked out. That's
like, particularly the 360 heel roll 3 out.
Yes.
I could not believe that I landed that, because I just discovered that I could do 360 heel roll at the skate park one day. And then I was like, oh, that's fun, because me and Carl Benny were just messing around, I think, and I discovered the trick. And then I just, it wasn't, that wasn't the reason. I discovered that you could do that crossover heel roll trick. And I'd never seen anyone do it before. And I was like, I think I've just like found a new trick. And then I maybe people have done it before, because like
I've seen people do it, but I know it's never been particularly like focused on in a video like it has in Fifth Floor.
You know, I remember Eddie Chung posted Shreddy posted a clip of it one day, and I sent it straight to David because it was like 6 months after I'd done it, and I was like, we have to get this video out because people are like,
people are going to think I ripped him off.
Yeah, exactly. But no, the trick like that, the progression was that I found out that trick, and then I was like, oh, I can 360 into it, and then I was like, oh, but what about if I just do heel roll? And then I wanted to 180 out off the stairs. But at some point, my foot was just in that perfect position. And I think my body, it was almost like it just happened, like automatically. My body came round in 360. And that feeling of landing that was just like, what the fuck just happened? Like,
yeah, when you exceed your own expectations, yeah, you're like, that worked out better than I actually wanted it to in my head. That's amazing.
So funny. You can see in the clip afterwards, I'm holding a beer and I'm like going to cheers people who are not even there to cheers me. I'm just like, oh, like I'm just like in my own like excitement.
Giddy, yeah.
Giddy.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments like that, and it opens the door to other things, because if you can do the double, like, I guess I would call it like, I don't know, unity heel roll or something. You could do like unity toe roll, and it could just start, and you kind of hinted at it when you were on that block thing. You could start pivoting, doing it, and seeing what else there's. Yeah, that opens up, definitely opens up other possibilities. Yeah.
The filming, but what I was saying before is the spontaneous energy that's been in this section is just that during, like, I'd say since I moved to Copenhagen, my skating has changed like a lot. Like, and it's my basic energy that I give to skating, I think, is still pretty similar, because I've always been quite fast paced on my skates and being quite erratic, or like ADHD on my skates. But I think that I developed that into my own style while being here, and just like found a way to make it my own. And I now feel pretty rested in my style. Like, I feel like I know what my thing is on skates now, and I know what I want to do, and I know like the sort of movements that I want to do. And I just want to keep on pushing that and see where it takes me, because I feel like I've really found a niche somehow in the way that I want to skate. And
I would say that's true. Yeah. And I think where you live has a lot to do with it, because there's certain environments where it's just not that easy to explore options like that, because there's certain places that don't have as much of that kind of terrain, if you know what I mean. Like, particularly, like, one of the best examples I think of is in Scotland. There's very few the UK in general, there's very few places to do lines. So like, see, when you watch American videos, loads of people are always doing lines down, like, you know, certain handrails that connect each other, or certain ledges in a school where they can do like 3 or 4 tricks. We don't have that here because there's no such thing as schools with like multiple ledge spots or streets. And if there are, they're capped pretty much after the first time we've used it. So you just don't, I think that's why you see a lot of British videos and it's like one hit, one hit, one hit. And you might get lucky, like, I don't know, with Leon's videos recently or some of the stuff John Lee's made. There's a few line spots in it, but they're very few and far between. And
well,
as a result,
London. That's London, and I feel like London almost is its own thing in terms of UK skating, because they have, like, you know, it's more of a mega city and maybe has more architectural possibilities that are suited to skating.
Yeah, there's just new stuff all the time. Yeah,
Scotland is just another that's just another ball game. Like, I mean, growing up, like, Aberdeen street skating is just rugged.
The spots are pretty unforgiving, and they don't really lend themselves to that much creativity. You're very limited in what you can do on a lot of the obstacles. Yeah,
I know for a fact that my creativity with skating can stem itself back to the absence of things, like not having spots, not having them. Because, like, I grew up in Stonehaven, small town, 20 minutes from the city, and we had a half pipe. And so I was watching videos and there was nowhere to emulate what I was seeing in the videos. So I would just, like, for me, it was all happening in my imagination. I was imagining that I was way better on skates than I was. I think I was imagining that I was skating the curb outside my grandma's house, and I was fake locking tricks, and then just, like, imagine, like, you know, feeling the rest of the way there, just imagining that I was doing it on, like, a curved ledge or something. Like, I used to get called true top roll because I used to not lock my true top soles. You know, there was just, like, I definitely wasn't matching up with what I was watching to begin with. And I think my imagination with skating developed just through having to make the most with what I had in just, I think it's funny to trace your influences and think about where you might have been influenced, or what might have influenced certain aspects of your skating.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I can see direct influences also to the fact that even though I love the creative tech skating and toe rolls and all these things, I grew up in a skate culture, you could say, that called toe rolls gay. And so, like, I mean, the Scottish skate scene up until a certain point was considering all that Valo shite.
I think there was an element of that, but I don't think that was actually speaking for the whole scene. I think it was just speaking for the most vocal members of the scene, if you know what I mean. So there were people that were into it and do it, and I've always been a massive fan of it. But I do think the people that didn't like it and, you know, chose to be that way weren't necessarily the voices of everyone. They were just the loudest voices.
Yeah, that's quite true. I mean, there's definitely people I remember growing up, there'd be skaters like that I would see had something different. And I don't want to, when I'm naming names here, it's not because I'm trying to miss anyone out, but like Robbie Calvert and like Matthew Stewart, and like there was these, and Dave Thomas, there were skaters that I just remember having something different to the other main conglomerate of like Scottish skaters.
Yeah.
Because the Scottish skating, I feel, has been dominated by like rail skating for a minute. When I was growing up, I just remember feeling like it was because that's what we have on offer.
Yeah, that was the most common, like, steep, horrible rails. Yeah.
And I remember like my ultimate goal as a young skater was to hit a handrail or to grind Northfield. The
long one on the right. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I can see that as an influence in my skating, that even though I've got that technical appreciation for like mushroom blading and all these sort of more like modern contemporary skate moves, I have a total burning urge to grind handrails and do back savannas on rails. And I think I can see that being connected totally to growing up skating with Gammy, Graham Forbes and Lewis Bowden and like the sort of
Yeah,
the sort of like,
it's a product of your environment. It's a product of your upbringing. Because if you're around that stuff and then you see guys like those doing impressive stuff on those obstacles, you're like, well, I want to do that too.
hmm,
And though you also have a creative side that you want to nurture and be like, well, I also want to explore these avenues as well. But you might just not have had the terrain to do it at the time.
totally. I mean, I can also just, I grew up on a sort of bookbinding of generations with skating, because it was like I was too young to be a part of the generation that just, above me. But I'm also a bit older than like the new generation somehow. So I always skated with the older people of the scene more. I think when I got to 14, 15, I was skating with Lewis and all these like older skaters much
Yeah.
more. I mean, and also the sort of conversations I was exposed to were always above my years, kind of.
Yeah, growing up too soon. Yeah, definitely. I can imagine some of the discussions they were having around those times, because they were all going out and partying, and some
Yeah,
of them were at university and stuff. So yeah.
even hearing about sexual endophores before I'd even hit puberty that were like terrified me.
You're like, don't know if that sounds that
I don't know.
appealing.
I don't know if sex is for me then, if that's what goes
Yeah, I
on.
might just give that a miss. Yeah, that's pretty funny. You have always, I've noticed, that is another thing I've always noticed, that you've always positioned yourself or aligned yourself with people that, reflect the type of skating that you want to do. Because I remember being really surprised, especially at a young age, by just how proactive you were in getting in contact with people and, forging these connections with people in different countries and different cities. Because I remember you getting in touch with the Honeybaits guys after that DVD came out and basically starting a relationship with them almost then. And then when they moved out to LA, like Bina and Dylan Davis and all that, you ended up going out to visit them and skating with them there. And then like the City Life guys and like, so I think you've always done a really good job of positioning yourself by the type of skating that you want to do, and like putting yourself next to those people. And, with people like, Greg Preston as well, because he's doing the Too Easy stuff, and the Haitian and Los Balas Perdidas guys and stuff like that. So, because not a lot of people were doing that at that time, and the people that were a lot older than you. So it's hard enough to put yourself out there and use social media for that, that kind of relationship building. But you were doing it at a very young age, because the the Haitian guys were young themselves. Like they were in their like late teens, early 20s, but you were even younger than them.
Yeah, I mean, the first Haitian video that I was a part of, the video that they did when they came to Europe on a tour,
Reincarnation, yeah.
Reincarnation, I was 16 years old.
That's what I mean.
And I'm now 23 years old, and I look back on that like that was 7 years ago. Like, what was I doing? Like, that is crazy. And I can't, I seriously owe, and I have so much respect for my parents for allowing me to do that, because it was like a trust thing
They put
beyond.
a lot of trust in you, yeah, to basically travel around Europe with just some random dudes, yeah.
So essentially, the conversation went a little bit something like, I left school in the summer when I ended my fourth year of high school in Scotland, and secondary school. And I turned 16 just after I left school. And I went to this art and design course at college for a year. And the conversation went something like, I will go back to college and study photography if you allow me to go on this trip, which was kind of like it was kind of like an agreement we made. And I just was begging them, and I was like, this seriously is like means the world to me, and this is like my idols, which at the time it was. I mean, Honey Baked, that was, I don't think a video had ever influenced me so much. When that video came out, I felt like it represented something new for me in skating, and it was like that was the sort of skating I wanted to do. And it was at a time when I was starting to get really into music, and like notice it, picking up on the music that was being used in skate videos and stuff. And they had a certain sort of like 60s influence style, and I was really into that at the time. I was going into charity shops buying 60s style shirts all the time. I'd probably
I remember when you deep dived into that. It was a new exciting time for blading, because for such a long time we just had all these pros that it felt like they'd been around forever, and it was like, when are they ever going to give new guys a chance? And then it felt like these young kids just went, we're not waiting for a chance, we're just creating it ourselves. If you're not going to put us in your videos, we're just going to make our own.
Yeah, and they'll be better than your ones.
Yeah, exactly. They're more interesting. They were, they newer spots that we hadn't seen before, and they were showing off things that people hadn't seen.
Rough around the edges, but it didn't matter how grainy and rough they were, because the energy and vibe was so visible that it was just like the message was delivered. And I definitely got the message, and I was like, essentially wrote to them on, I think Dylan Davis was my favorite skater ever at that point. I idolized him. I would be looking at photos of him on his Facebook, like thinking, who is this guy? Like totally idolizing him. And I wrote to them like, hey, I really want to skate with you one day. And I was buying the Haitian t-shirts, and I was like, just in love with what Haitian was up to. And I remember just watching the first Haitian videos on repeat, and they used like this sort of Memphis trap music. And I was just like, all this music that I felt like, wow, this is a whole new discovery. It was that time when I discovered Can too. And that's still like my favorite band coming from that. And that can be traced to finding that through Haitian. And yeah, then I was writing with them, and I started having a online relation with them. And then they just told me they were coming to Europe. And I was like, okay, I want to get involved. And I think the original idea was I can meet up with you guys at Summer Clash or something. And then they said they were going to do a tour. And eventually it was like, yeah, I can't remember exactly, but we made an agreement, and I managed to convince my parents to let me go on this trip. And my dad took me down to London to meet up with them, because that's where the start of the trip was. And he wanted to just suss them out and see if they were okay. But he didn't actually meet them. He just let me go and meet them and see, and then come back to him and tell me how I'd found them. And even if I had a weird experience, of course I was going to tell him that it was.
You were like, yeah, they're fine.
And I remember that first weekend in London, we stayed out until 7 a.m, and I'd agreed to meet my dad at 9 for breakfast. And I just didn't sleep and went straight to meet my dad. And like, just already from that, I was like, wow, this is going to be fun. So I went home to Scotland with my dad, packed my bags, and went to meet them in Berlin, where we went to Summer Clash. And then from then on in, it was just 2 months of, wow, I mean, I couldn't keep my head screwed on when I came back from that trip. I was like, it was surreal to go on that trip and come back to Scotland, and a lot of my friends were still at school and stuff. And
that's what I mean. That's going to be an eye-opening experience on a lot of levels for you, because it's the first time you've fully immersed yourself in skate culture. Like, you basically just spent an entire summer traveling and skating. You're skating with people that, you've probably thought about hanging about with for years, and now you've finally realized that dream. You're seeing all these different locations and cultures that you've probably not been as exposed to in such in-depth, because you're actually there and hanging about and interacting with people from those countries. So there's just so many different things going on.
Yeah, I mean, I remember speaking to, it was quite funny, because a few of the other people from my class in school left at the same time as me, mainly the bad ones from school.
Yep.
The ones who talked too much in class, they were encouraged to leave school and go to college, because I think the school had enough of us. And some of them got into the psytrance community.
Well, okay, right.
It was funny, because we kind of found different ways of getting to the same place mentally somehow, because I remember I was in France on the Haitian tour, and I came in contact with my friend Paul at the time on Facebook. And I remember at the time, the conversation we were having was just like, energy cannot die. Energy goes on and changes form, and kind of like, we were both just like, it was sudden. I think we just went from living in Stonehaven to just like universe caress my soul, like, just like, we're just like, it was just like, yeah. And that trip, I still cite that trip as like one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever had. And seriously, I feel like I'm still recovering from it somehow, just not recovering from it, but it's the sort of thing that I'll tell my kids for sure, that like, it's like one of those moments. It's like a punctuation mark.
It's still impacting you now. Yeah,
totally. or I see how things like that shaped my character and influenced me to do certain things. And even David marks, or David often says how he thinks that trip and my exposure to the Haitian stuff like changed my skating and like my mentality and attitude about skating.
Yeah, I can imagine it would. Plus, there was also, just wild, pivotal life moments in that. There was the whole bus stop incident as well, which that's the kind of thing that's one of those moments that's never bus incident with, was it Seba or Seba, wasn't it?
Seba.
Yeah, like
Seba.
stuff, and that's the stuff like that thankfully, it was a horrible experience, but he got past it. But that's one of those things where, that's when you realize very significant things about life and how fragile it is, and how, quickly it can just be taken from you or almost taken from you. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that entire experience, and it seems like you have.
I think that video for me, I don't watch that video unless I'm going to watch the whole video. It's almost like a respect I pay to the video. And I don't show people that video unless they're prepared to watch the whole video, because that trip wasn't just a good trip. And I don't want to show someone my section like it was just a fun section, because it's seriously like a spiritual video to me, in terms of just because it was so impactful. And I remember at the time I had a notebook while I was on that trip, and just remember writing stuff and about what happened with Seba, and just feeling like I'd never ever noticed that the click between life and death could be so quick. Like the veil felt like it just got thin for a second. And I just felt like I'd never been brought so close to what death might look like.
That's what I mean. Like you essentially, you came very close to witnessing death. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like it actually, we thought Seba might have died, and that was the crazy thing. And I love Seba so much, and he's such an amazing human being, and the way that he took that experience and that accident or took that accident and turned it into some sort of, like, he thrived from it somehow, and he turned it into an experience that you could learn from, and that's a ode to him as a person.
Yeah.
But I remember at the time it happening, Seba's eyes were turning into the back of his skull, and he said that he could only see white light and electricity. And he said he couldn't feel his limbs, couldn't feel his legs. And he was lying on the middle of a road with traffic miles in each direction almost. You know what I mean? No, not miles, but there was traffic on either side. And there was cars beeping. And the whole thing just felt like, it almost feels like a dream. But there's a bus that had like a full bus that parked up at the side of the road. The bus driver was on the side of the street crying because she thought she'd killed him. Everyone was standing watching. I had a nervous breakdown, and I was at the side of the street getting caressed by this old lady, and she was speaking French to me, because I was like shivering and like freaking out, because I thought that I felt like it was my fault, and in some way I was definitely directly linked to what happened. But at the same time, I came to a lot of realizations with that too, because it was like, you could have said go 1 second sooner or 1 second later. And at the end of the day, we choose to do what we do ourselves, and we put a lot of trust into our friends. But we also have to always realize that we're choosing to put ourselves into these risky situations with our skating. And when that happened with Seba, he got taken away in the ambulance with Bina. And when he got put into the ambulance, he was in a really bad state. And we had to skate with everyone's backpacks back to the apartment we were living at the time, Clements in Lyon. And we didn't have any phones or anything. So our phones didn't work anyway. So we skated, and we've never skated so fast in our life, I don't think. We skated so fast back to the apartment. We didn't say a word. And in that time, skating back to the apartment, I was starting to feel like I might be going to the hospital to be told that Seba might not be alive. And so we got back to the apartment, and Seba's brother Jonah had broke his leg 3 days earlier in Paris.
I forgot that happened in the same
Yeah,
trip.
so
Yeah.
he's in the apartment, and we go home and we say, Jonah, your brother has been in an accident. We have to go to the hospital right now. It's really critical. And we grabbed some stuff and we all ran into the car and drove to the hospital. We weren't really speaking. We didn't know what was going on. Thankfully, Clements had a car and he was off work and took us there. But in the way on the car, I wrote Seba a letter, like not knowing. Like I just wrote a letter almost like as if I was writing it to him not being alive.
Yeah.
And then we got to the hospital and I couldn't go inside. I felt too scared to go inside because I felt so bad that I'd been on the road watching for cars. And I felt so scared. And then remember Martim from Portugal came out to me and he says, like, Dom, it's okay. Seba's smiling. He's up there smiling, laughing. He's okay. You can come upstairs. And I really felt frightened to go upstairs. And I walked into the room and Seba was just like, Dom, homie, give me a hug. And he was lying in bed laughing. And it's like, it was like, that was the sort of vibe that we were on in the Haitian video. We were like, it was like, it really felt like family actually. And we all shared tears together and we all, like, that was an emotional experience. And Seba told us, well, we got told what's happened to Seba and he had to have different x-rays and stuff. And you see it in the video, he's sitting with all the Haitian magazines watching them and he's just pressing the morphine
the
button.
morphine gun. Yeah.
He's just like, you know, and he told us that he wanted us to keep on filming the video for him so that he could have clips to watch when we came to the hospital.
Okay.
And we were like, it doesn't feel right, but because he gave us like the permission, we were still going out and getting stuff. And we'd go visit him every day pretty much in the hospital. I just remember that night, Bina and Clemence and Martim and I went back to the house, the apartment we were living at in Lyon, and we just poured each a whiskey. And I remember we all just sat in almost absolute silence. It was almost like grieving. We were like, and we were just like what a day. I was just, that whole period was insane. I took a few days to call my parents about it because I didn't know how to express what had happened. Yeah. And I just remember telling them that, like, listen, I'm in Lyon and pretty much my friend is being run over by a bus. Like, and that when you tell something that to someone, they don't believe that you're speaking about someone who's now alive, because it's someone's been hit by a bus is one thing, but actually being run over by a bus is like, I mean, I just see it as like it's like a second, like like his energy was too strong to go. He's meant to be here, and he's like, you know, because that he could have easily gone there, like, and he spoke of some insane experiences during the time that he was in the hospital, the first 2 weeks, like having out of body experiences where he was trying, because his body was in so much pain, he was trying to do these meditations where he would try to like have an out of body experience. Seba is just an incredibly interesting and strong-spirited person. Yeah, that like if I went to a psychologist, without a doubt, that would be one of the things that comes up.
Oh, of course, like it's an incredibly traumatic experience for everyone. Of course, it would. But on the out,
can I take a pee break?
Of course.
Can we do that? Because I'm almost like, I think I'm getting all nervous.
All right. And he's back. He's refreshed. Yeah. Despite that obviously happening, it still, I think, overall was a positive experience because you ended up forging these really strong relationships with all these people, and you went out to LA after that, is that right? Or was it before?
I mean, they weren't, I think, actually, when they came to Europe, in terms of the history of the Haitian thing, which is not really my story to tell, but just to give you some perspective, it's like when they came to Europe, it was the end of the LA.
Yeah, because they were already done with the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then obviously it did, you know, you kept up a relationship with Bina and people like that. And yeah, like you said, the brothers, because you ended up doing more trips with Bina and stuff like Inti, and I don't know how to pronounce the newest Haitian one, Ishide? Ished?
I mean, it's like with a Spanish accent, but it's a shady, I think.
Ishede. So like, and you've obviously been on multiple trips with various members of that group since then and kept in touch with them. So it's like you guys have created this bond that may not have been as strong if that event didn't happen.
Yeah, and I mean there's some things that we can explain like that was in the video, but there's also lots of things that happened on that trip that are going to remain secrets, and we know about them. And there's lots of things that happened that we can't tell you about, and that I don't want to tell, and just also have strengthened that bond. Like it was just like a turning point. It was a turning point. I think it was for all of us, actually. It was their first time in Europe. You know, it was like that sort of like classic American skater comes to Europe, but it wasn't like destroy all girls mode. But you know, it wasn't like this. It wasn't like the sort of go around the competition circuits and just go woo. But at the same time, it was like we had the energy. Like the energy was just in a way reckless, but it was just in its own way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It wasn't like the American invasion. It was like the American immersion. They were like, let's just try and get ourselves involved as much as we can in each place. And it wasn't, we visit.
There was also some of us involved that were, new, like the people we stayed with and stuff. Me and Martim and some of the other European guys had met these people before, and it was kind of a crossover of it was so interesting, and I could think about that trip forever. Like it was so much. When I watch that video, I get so nostalgic. And
understandably. I think, what you mean is it was a lot more organic than it would first appear. It wasn't just these people just being lumped together. There were various connections that were, the
whole way it happened. Like, I mean, Martim came onto the trip because in Berlin, he was at Summer Clash and he just started hanging out with us because he liked Haitian. And then we were just like, what are you doing this summer? And he said that he had no plans and he had to call his girlfriend and see if it was okay. And then he was like, I'm coming on the tour with you. And then we were like, where are we going to go next? And then we decided next we go to Amsterdam. And then we just decided to go to Amsterdam. And once we're in Amsterdam, we're there. And then we just decided, okay, time to move on. Where are we going to go? Oh, let's go to Paris. And it was just, that was the way it progressed. It was just like,
spontaneous.
It wasn't played out. It was just like it wasn't planned out. Sorry. I think we had a brief idea that they wanted to make it to Barcelona, to Mark Moreno's place.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Bina made it there eventually. But it was kind of just drawing our way through bit by bit. And yeah, I definitely cite that as one of my most impactful skating experiences, and it has set me on a path to go on trips like that with Bina in the future, and and the other ones, and just it gave me a confidence, I guess, in a certain approach to skating, because that I couldn't find that in Scotland. That wasn't that sort of thing. What they were doing, I didn't feel there was that sort of approach to skating going on in Scotland.
I would agree. There's definitely not that kind of energy, and not, I want to say almost people not, and I don't mean it in a bad way, like just as dedicated, if that makes sense, because most of the skaters in Scotland now are older and they've got, jobs and kids and just lives outside it, and there's not as many skaters that are of that age to just immerse themselves in it fully and just go, we're just disappearing for several months to skate. Because and the people that are young enough to do it aren't as, I don't want to say serious about it, but just as like die hard about it. They just they skate and they enjoy it, and that's all they want. They don't want to fully pursue that lifestyle or that culture as much. So, and like, I do think you had to go away and like hang about with a different group of people in order to have that experience. I don't think you would have had it with Scottish skaters.
No, and I don't really understand I don't really understand how I got so involved with skating. I can see why, because I loved it, but like I almost try to unprogram myself, because I think this the way that I have viewed skating in the past going forward isn't always going to help me. I'm trying to sometimes like unattach myself from skating a bit so I can see what other options are there for me in life, because sometimes I'm so barreled thinking with skating
Yeah.
that it's like it's my whole life, and that allows me to be very passionate about it. But that self-identity with something can also make you sad when it's not going the way you want it to go. So
Yeah.
yeah, you
If
have
you
to be careful.
dedicate so much, yeah, if you dedicate so much of your energy to that one thing, well, what if it doesn't pan out? Or what if it doesn't, what if it then gets taken away from you through injury or through something? Yeah. And then you're left with, if you dedicate such a huge portion of your being to that one thing, if you can't do it anymore, it leaves you with very little else.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been going through so many. The last year, I'd say, I've been. I'm 23 now, which isn't. You'll laugh at me because
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not old at all. But it is a point where you're figuring out, because it's at the point where you're like, well, cool. Now I need to start thinking about the future, because I am 23. I'm not a stupid little teenager anymore. I realize there's bills to pay and there's a future to think about, and my body's not going to be able to do this forever. And it's, yes, 23 is still young, but it is also a point where you're very much like at the point of realizing the type of person you are and what you want.
it's funny because I think it's just like I feel like I'm getting into my skin more and more, where I'm starting to realize like I'm not a teenager anymore, and but all these experiences that I had as a teenager feel like they're still just right here. Like when we're speaking about the Haitian stuff, it feels like I can recall it like it was just right there, you know. But at the same time, I feel more and I feel my focus shifting with regards to what I want from life. And I couldn't sit here and clearly tell you exactly what I want on a list, but it's just like I can sense that there's ways I want to do things, and there's what, you know, and just like I definitely think that yeah, 23 is a funny age to be in. And
Well,
just
because that's the age when a lot of people are finishing university and
yeah.
starting adult life, starting working life. And for people that haven't, it's at a point where if you haven't gone to university, you've been working for several years now, and you realize you're like, oh, this isn't what I want for my life, or I don't want to do this job, or
Oh, exactly.
and you've obviously made some big life decisions in that period, because you've been living in Copenhagen for what, how many years now?
Since I was 19.
That's what I mean. Like most people don't just decide to up and leave and move to a foreign country where they don't speak the language at 19, and you've stuck around like 4 years. So that's a long time to stay in a place. Do
Yeah, I
you?
mean, I scratch my head because I'm like, at the time I moved here, it didn't really feel like a big thing because I was so in love that it just kind of felt like I got carried here by like it just felt like it was all making sense, and I would just now I'm just here, and now I'm life's here. And
Yeah, because you moved. Did you meet a girl at Roskilde, and that's why you moved there?
yeah, I met my ex-girlfriend Clara at Roskilde, but then we had I was traveling at the time after that, and then we had a week together in Italy and just fell pretty madly in love from and then I just from there on I decided that I was going to stop traveling. At the time I was traveling with skating, trying to go to different competitions, and my plan was to maybe go to Asia for the first time. Still never been there because fell in love and decided I'm moving home to Scotland to save up money and going to go move to Denmark. Went home to Scotland for 8 months, saved up enough, and saved up enough that I would have like 3 month reserve in case
Right.
I couldn't find a job, and then moved here. And it's just, yeah, it's crazy to still be here. And especially like Clara and I are not in a relationship anymore. And so it kind of changes the whole perspective of being here, because it's like, I wasn't here only for Clara, but that was definitely the thing that brought me here.
That was the thing that influenced you to move there in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had reason to move to Copenhagen. I mean, in the Haitian video, just to reference that again, when I first came to Copenhagen, that was the first time I ever came to Copenhagen. And I remember being like, oh, I love this city. The city's got something going for it that I really like cycling about and the skate spots. And I just was very attracted to the sort of way of life in Denmark. I was here in the summer, so obviously it was even more attractive.
You're like, yeah,
And
swimming in the river and sitting outside all day. This is great. And then it gets to winter and you're like, shit, it's cold here.
darkness. But then yeah, and I think it's then I moved here from being to be with Clara and invest in our relationship and just be here on a day-to-day basis. And it's crazy to go around Copenhagen. I still have this, and it's my home now. I consider it home here. I mean, home is Scotland too, but this is like individually, this is like, I love it here and I want to continue living here if I can.
Yeah, like you've planted yourself in that community. You've made a friendship group. You're familiar with the area. You've worked various jobs there. That it is your home. It might not be where you were born and bred, but it is your home.
Yeah, totally. And I feel that I relate to it as home also, like not just when I say it to people, but with myself, I do see it as that and identify it as my home. And when I cycle around or skate around the streets, it's funny because I have all these memories of skate trips that I used to have here. And it's like, it's just like layered in this funny way where it's like, I'll go to a kebab shop and I'll be there with a colleague and I'll be sitting in that kebab shop and remember the time I was there with Bina.
Yeah, you've experienced it on multiple levels. Like you've experienced the city on various different planes. I know. I've
experienced it as like with the charm of being 16 years old for the first time on a trip on my own. I've experienced it on the, just returning again and again for Roskilde every year, and I've experienced, I go and skate the local skate park, and I've skated that skate park with like every pro skater on the planet at some point in time. It's just like, when Roskilde is happening, I've experienced the local park with like full of Montre and everyone, and it's just funny to have. It's almost like phantoms or ghosts that I just see around of like all these memories that have happened. It's like it just gives me enriches. I think it enriches my experience of being here, having that past memories.
Definitely. When did you and your partner split up?
In May.
Right.
End of May 2020 last year.
Because I was curious about that, because we haven't really like spoke since then. Because I was like, Tom's been out with her for years, so surely the logical step is they just move in together, and it's sharing rent is cheaper than having it on your own. But then when that never happened, and then when I saw, because you moved in with, didn't you move in with Carl like last year?
Yeah, March last year.
Yeah, because I was like,
wasn't the reason we broke up though.
I'm not saying he broke your leg, but I was just like, it's kind of weird that Dom would move in with him and not with his girlfriend. Right, okay, that makes sense. Because when you did the Wax Toaster episode, I was watching it and I was like, Dom just kind of seems a little bit sad in this. And I know that a lot of things have been going on, because you'd obviously, was that when you were self-isolating as well, because you tested positive for coronavirus? Was that around that time?
When I did the Wax Poster? No, Wax Toaster. Yeah, that was a week after I just came out of self-isolation. But I watched...
There was something about you, and you just didn't seem yourself. Like you seemed just a little bit either subdued or unsure, or just a little bit, melancholy or something.
Totally. I watched that back for like 20 minutes of it just to check how I was talking and stuff, because I have a little bit of a bad conscience. I feel a little bit when I have these podcast things, I'm a little bit nervous because I can't watch my Jump Street podcast. Like I can't watch it.
You were very hyperactive. You were very hyper. Like you could tell that your nerves were all over the place there. Yeah,
exactly. And I think other people took it across. People who don't know me and haven't met me before and haven't engaged with me like person to person and face to face, I think could take that as just like rudeness, because I actually in that particular podcast I also thought I was being rude. Like, and I didn't mean to be. But
I know what you mean, but yeah, the person you were on that podcast is not the person I've hung about with numerous times over the years. You could tell that I think the occasion got the better of you, and your brain went into fast forward. Yeah.
It was like overdrive. Like, I mean, the way I'm speaking, I get cringy watching it because it's like, but I gotta say, like, Billy and I the night before, I should have just, me and David were laughing. I said, I should have just said that at the start of the podcast, but like Billy and I the night before had a few beers, and Billy at the time was working for, like he had some edibles candy lying around. And
Okay.
I'd ate a few of them, and I woke up in the morning and had that podcast, and I was like, holy shit, my brain's still in La La Land. So then I like downed a few coffees. And then just before I went into the podcast, I had Austin Paz's girlfriend or wife, I can't remember, but made me a really strong coffee.
Oh,
and
God.
I just went into that podcast and was like,
wow. Okay. Yep. So still
so when I went on the Wax Poster podcast, I had a piece of paper sitting in front of me that said, please don't interrupt and listen. But it was to the point where I noticed that I was almost like biting my tongue and I think that's where you've got that feeling that I was not myself, because I was really trying to make an effort to be to listen, and I do listen, but just not to let my like automatic impulse take over too much.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There was actually, and that reminds me, there was something I asked. I like sent you a DM about that, and then you just ignored me. So I'm going to ask you about it now. You made the weirdest statement on that podcast that just made no sense whatsoever when you said, I don't understand what's expected of me as a pro skater. Can you elaborate on that? Because you're an intelligent young man. So I want to know what you actually mean when you say that.
Okay.
Because it's not that difficult.
No.
It's not a complex
Okay, so
arrangement.
let's break it down. I'll try to break down what I've said there and figure out what I mean. I think as a pro skater, okay, you would hope that the ideal would be that you would represent a company, and in order to represent that company in this day and age, that would probably mean social media presence.
Yep.
Where the company is tagged in that, and it's shown that the company is one who's supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably mean competition attendance and trying to do your best in a competition for that company, or just for yourself, and then you represent that company.
Right.
But mainly it's just representing that brand in whatever way you can.
Yeah.
That's what you would be expected of you as a pro skater, right?
So what about that? Do you not understand, or doesn't make sense to you?
I just think it doesn't work anymore, because I don't think companies I just don't think that some certain companies respect the skate culture enough. And I don't think that I don't want to get my tongue in a twist here, and I'm definitely way more cautious right now than I would be if I was speaking to my friends, that's for sure.
Well, let me put it this way. When you say, I found that very surprising that you said you didn't understand what was expected of you as a pro skater, because you do already fulfill what I believe are the requirements of a pro skater, in that I wouldn't say competition appearances are that important. You know, if you are a competition skater, it is. See, if you're not a competition skater, sometimes going to an event and just absolutely tanking does more harm than good, if you know what I mean. But you don't fall into that category. You know, you've won under 18s Winter Clash, you've won numerous events, you've placed on the podium at the last 2 Winter Clashes. So in terms of competition experiences, you are a competition skater. Like, you're competitive and you thrive under that kind of pressure. So it makes sense for you to be at those events. You're also very approachable and have a good reputation. I know very few people that don't think highly of you. They're all like, oh yeah, Dom's a good laugh, Dom's really friendly, da-da-da. You go to various countries. And then video appearances, you've had appearances in some of the most interesting projects of the last 10 years, like Pappy's, Inti, Haitian Reincarnation, now the Fifth Floor. the most recent Haitian video as well. So it's like all the things that are required of a skater, I would say you do. You're not as active on social media. I know that you use it for direct messaging people, but I know that you don't really feel the need to promote your skating on there as much, because you're not one of those guys that just shoves up a clip every day or, you know, a couple of times a week. That's not you. Mm-hmm. But it shouldn't have to be. You shouldn't have, like, not every skater is that person, and you shouldn't have to manipulate who you are in order to represent a brand, because everyone knows the brands that you're associated with and everyone respects you as a skater. So what else is there to do?
And I also see that, I also think of it as that whatever I do somehow is connected to skating. So even like the way I handle my social media, the things that I choose to put up on there, it's still like that's part of my character and part of my personality that I try to express. And I feel like that's just somehow tied to skating, even if it's not directly. It's like I'm just so embedded in skating that I feel like everything I do somehow gets back there.
I would say, yeah, I would say when you're a lifer, like I would say you are, that's a fair assessment. But what do you find problematic about that whole thing then, the whole relationship between the sponsor and the skater? Because I would say there are brands that very much do respect skate culture and very much.
I would say so too, and I'm definitely
very much leave the skater to just be themselves. And
agree, I totally agree. So let me try to, like, it's a little bit fuzzy in my head right now because I don't, because of the first question that you've approached it with. It's like, you know what I mean? I want to try to clear something that annoys me. So I think that some brands, as I can see the way that other people on those brands see that some brands would much rather give away a few pairs of free skates to some kids or some people who'll throw up some clips on Instagram and use that free publicity than invest in making what I consider skate culture and skate media that I find way more important to, because as an industry, of course we need companies to make skates and to keep the industry side of the blade community together. But I'm first and foremost a skater, and I see the culture as the most important thing. And to me, that's why I'm so involved in all these projects. I see blade media as like so important. Also, what you're doing. I mean, I like medias of any kind. I think that to me, I see skating as a artistic pursuit in a lot of ways, and I'm a very creative person, and I think that skating has the ability to be just as artistic as other things, you know, and I think that there has to be a quality control then involved somehow, that you're just like, I want companies to believe in or show that the kind of media that they believe in, or like, you know, because for me, it's like when I'm involved in these projects, that's me showing that this is the sort of things that I think is important. This is the sort of project.
You're endorsing it by putting your name next to it, or by appearing in it. You're saying this is what I think represents what I believe is the truest form of skating, or what is my outlook in skating. Yeah.
Or shows the potential of skate media in the best way, or something like that. And I think we've only scratched the surface with that. I mean, I'm writing down ideas in books all the time about skate edits I want to make. And, you know, there is so many things that are ways of encapsulating or capturing skating that haven't been done. And I just get a little upset when I grew up in a skate culture where watching videos was what it was all about. And to me, all skating's ever really been has been skating and watching skating. And that's what I'm all about. I like skating, and I like watching other people skating and bringing influence, and I feel like that's just a cycle. And if brands show that they don't appreciate that anymore, then I find it very hard to relate to those brands, because I feel like we're not on the same page.
How do you think they don't appreciate it? Like what gives you an indication that they don't appreciate it?
Letting the standard drop so low. putting out edits that are just like a joke, like putting out I feel like as a brand you should also have a singularity or some sort of image that you're trying to express. But if your image is just confused, then how is anybody supposed to relate to you if they don't know what you're about?
Yeah. So as in, you mean it should have like a strong, uniform, like consistent, outlook that it's given to I don't know, consumers essentially, or to the culture. Yeah.
I think skate brands should be more interested in their image, actually. And I think that it's not just about image, but it's also having the content of the image. Like them skates, they have a singular brand defined image somehow, and you kind of get what them's about when you see them.
Yeah.
But it's not just an image. You also see that John is, backing what he's showing, and he
Yeah.
shows, like, so they put out skate content that makes you feel a certain way. But if another company put out that content and then you heard that they weren't actually fulfilling the vibe that they were putting out, then you would be a little bit like, oh, you make it look like you're this, but you're actually not that.
Yeah.
Whereas John,
It doesn't look genuine, or it doesn't look sincere. I know what you mean.
exactly,
Yeah.
and I think John does a good job of showing his sincerity in what he's doing with them. And I just think that other brands are just they're not expressing it's all mixed up. I just don't see a brand image. I don't see a strength or a singularity in the way that they choose to present skating. And to me, that's what it's all about. I consistently think about the way I want to present my skating and the way I want people to see my skating. And that's a self-driven thing. That's my self-driven wish for my own skating.
Yeah.
I feel like the brand is just an extension of the skaters. Like it's just like there's.
Yeah, I would say so. If anything, I would say the skaters have become their own entities now, and if anything, they are more important than the brands in a lot of sense, because I would say, like, I became very much aware of this when I started Wheel Scene. I was like, no magazine is ever going to have the influence that Daily Bread ever had. No magazine, never again. It doesn't matter who starts it. It doesn't matter. Even, Haitian, when I thought they had a really cool idea, the fact is, skaters are in such a position of power now with social media and with being able to present themselves and market themselves in their own way. And you see it with people like, even people, that may not represent, your outlook on skating. Like, they've made themselves into their own business with their own like channel or their own like massive following on social media, and they're using that to propel their idea of what they think skating is. And I think it's very hard for media to do that anymore, because it can't be that influential. The skater is always going to be more influential than the magazine. And I think the same thing goes for companies. You could essentially mask what the skater is wearing and it wouldn't matter, because the brand is no longer the one that builds the skater. The brand does not, like, for example, a lot of people credit Brian Shima's legacy with Razors. Razors didn't make Brian Shima an iconic skater. Shima made Razors an iconic brand, because before Brian Shima came along, Razors were a very middle of the road company that no one was really that interested in. They had a few great skaters here and there, like Marco Hintze and Josh Petty and stuff like that, but they were all in transition periods. Like, Petty ended up going to Roces and then USD. They took a chance on Shima, which was great. But if Shima wasn't the absolute, juggernaut that he was and firing out, he'd already had the 2-section coupe de tête part in USDs, which was huge. He had 2 ender sections. They then got him just before he hit the peak of his powers, gave him pro skates, and then he just went stellar, and he made the brand what it is. And then they obviously got John Elliott and Murda and da-da-da. It could very much be argued that brand did not make those skaters iconic. Those skaters made that brand this like huge force. And I think along the way, some brands have forgotten that, and now they think, or unfortunately they're stuck in the past and they're like, oh, well, you guys aren't Shima, you're not Aragon, or you're not, Josh Petty, or you're not Dustin Latimer. And it's like, yes, but if you don't give them the chance to be, how can, like, those skaters were of a different era. They were of an era where people made icons. Whereas now You don't make an icon, you make a massive following, and that's different. It's not the same thing. So I would say there are various companies that are allowing skaters the freedom to express themselves how they want, as long as, you know, they're associating themselves with the brand and they're promoting the brand in the meantime. And then I would say there's other brands who are very much leaving skaters to their own devices and just kind of going, and then checking in on them every once in a while going, well, why are you not promoting us? And it's like, well, I believe I am. I'm just perhaps not promoting you on your terms.
So yeah, so there's a fine. I resonate with what you're saying there about the skater making the brand, and I think that you can look at say, just for the sake of conversation, we take a company like Razors for example, because you've used that.
I mean, it could also be applicable to, you know, USD.
No, you can apply it to other stuff, but you know, it's just to use that because for me, I feel like that's a really easily identifiable one for people. But it's like there's been generations of Razors where there's been different vibes present in each sort of generation that was like framed. So you had the Shima, Elliott period, and then you've had like for me, I grew up watching the Icons period of skating. And then you got the sort of game theory sort of Razors house period. And then I look at now, and my generation of Razors as being someone who skates for Razors. And I actually don't know how to define that. And that's because I feel there isn't an image actually that's so clear with the team. And I just, that's not a straight that's not only a negative critique, but it's an observation, and I think that it's, to be honest, I see it as quite an important observation in terms of brand image, and just like, yeah, I think there's a fine line too between this brand representation thing of not, like, you know, just leaving someone to their own devices and then just checking in on them every once in a while. That can also come across as just not caring. And
yeah, I think I understand how it can be interpreted that way. I do, yeah, because like you said, there's certain brands that have got a strong image like them, and even if you look at Roses look like they've got a cohesive unit. They look like they've got a team that have, you know, a shared vision. And from what I understand, they actually are regularly in contact with each other as a team. And then you've got other brands that it just kind of looks like a random just mix of skaters that don't really have any, you know, anything in common perhaps with each other. They're just these random skaters, and they might be great skaters, but there's no image to go along with it. And I think that can be damaging for a brand, because the entire point of a brand is an image. Like John's proven it himself. You can take a skate that was previously thought of really poorly and completely repackage it as something that is cool and unique and edgy and different by just giving it a solid image, giving it a solid marketing campaign, and, you know, creating a great team.
And being clear and simple, and just like not trying to just kind of breaking it down to the basics and being transparent with what your intentions are with the brand or something like that. And
yeah. And you can have the best product in the world. You can have like the most cutting edge technology, and, you know, it might never break and it might be very good at its purpose. But if you've not packaged it and, you know, shown it to the community well, or the industry, it's meaningless.
Mm-hmm. I think diversity and representation, especially in this day and age, that's a relevant conversation in terms of like the people that brands choose to represent them. In saying that, I think it's important to think about, if a team was to get together on a tour, how would that look? Because them skates, for example, or just keep on using that example, but it's an easy.
I mean, they have pretty much just taken over the aggressive inline industry. So it is an example most people are going to use.
Let's just use that because it's easily grabbable. But them skates, when you see them at Winter Clash together, they're like a unit, and they hang out together, and you can tell that they enjoy each other's company, and they're actually not just on a brand together, but they're friends, and they go for breakfast together, and they're
Yeah.
you can tell they have some sort of mutual understanding with each other. Whereas I see some teams, and it's like, to be honest, if I was at Winter Clash, I wouldn't know who was my teammate. To some degree I would, but there's so many people. Some brands have so many people writing for them that you don't even
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that breaks into the flow territory and stuff. But you don't even know who's on the same team as you, kind of.
Yeah, you regularly see it on Facebook groups, and people will be like, who's riding for such and such these days, or who's in the pro team for that? And see, if someone has to ask that, the brand's not doing their job. Like, no one should ever have to ask that. It should never be in any doubt.
No, like I could list the them team with my fingers. It's like because it's there and it's shown.
Yeah.
And I just think, that's the brand's job somehow is to put themselves in people's minds and make people remember them and identify them, and
how much of that responsibility do you think has to fall on the skater though? Like, if you say to yourself that there is that breakdown in the relationship, or you don't think that, or you're just unsure of what direction the brand's going in, do you think it's the skater's responsibility to try and open up a dialogue with that brand and be like, what are we doing here? What do you want from me? How can we progress things in a way that we're both happy with? Because I do think in a lot of cases, it's very easy to blame the company and be like, oh, the company's just let this fall apart. And then you speak to the skaters and you're like, oh, why did you quit? And they're like, I wasn't happy. And you're like, did you ever express that? And they go, no, I just get fed up with it and I just left. And you're like, all right. Or, they don't like the direction that something's happening. And I'm like, have you ever actually spoken to anyone about this? And they're like, oh yeah, I've told my friends. And you're like, well, telling your friends doesn't achieve anything. You need to speak to the person that. So
there's so much in that, Dave. Seriously, it's like, one, I think skating industry is notoriously known for bad communication. There's bad communication across the whole board. Like
I would say so, yeah.
It's just like, if you have a problem, like you say, like, go say it, and it's maybe not the problem you thought it was. Often, if you put skating relations with your sponsors in the way that it would be with a relationship with a partner, if you had all these issues about a partner and didn't tell them, and then just one day we're like, oh, I'm going to leave you tomorrow. And they're like, why? And you're like, oh, I had all these things. And they're like, well, couldn't we have spoke about that? I mean, you don't have relationships without problems, but it's not the problems that have to define the relationships. It's the way
it's how you navigate them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the key to longevity in relationships. Just like, I guess, communication and chemistry through that. But
so with that in mind, have you taken any steps? Or
I know, with that in mind, I would say that it's up to the person who feels disappointed or feels that it's up to the person who feels the problem to make to
first
start
step.
Because if you're the one who feels the issue, you can't hope that the other person's psychic and picks up on it. You should be upfront about your issue. And I think it's not. I'm not saying this on my yeah. I mean, I'm more just expressing dissatisfaction and disappointment in the way that some things are handled in skating. But I'm not saying that that's my situation.
Okay.
That's just things I'm observing in the way that I'm seeing skating.
I mean, you can see it in numerous brands with numerous skaters throughout the industry. Like, just look at all the people that, quit various companies, or all the people that, go from skates to skates. That alone is an indication that, there's a lot of people not having conversations they need to be having.
Totally. Just like company hopping. And then when that gets, the same hard talk comes up at that company, you're off to the next one or whatever. And yeah, I think a huge part of it sits on the skater's shoulders too. I mean, because I think that you also, things I learn when I speak to non-skating friends who are experienced in different job markets, and I tell them something about my skating sponsorship situation or something, they're like, do you ask for things? And then it depends what the answer is. Sometimes yes, the answer is sometimes no. And then they're like, well, then how do you expect that, and that comes back to what you're saying. It's like, how do you expect it to change if you haven't confronted the issue you want changed?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of skaters have not necessarily been in job situations where they've had that sort of confrontation with colleagues, but an argument doesn't. That's something I've learned actually by living in Denmark. A disagreement doesn't mean you're not friends with someone or you don't like. I think in Scotland people can quite try to avoid confrontation a lot, or not even just in Scotland, but I mean, sorry, in skating. That I don't know why I said Scotland. In skating, there's a lot of like, we're all friends and we all post love heart emojis on each other's clips on Instagram, and we're all trying to keep this homie camaraderie going on. And there is that. Listen, it's not totally false. But to be honest, I wish skaters were less scared of just voicing their opinions and just straight up saying if there's issues, because we're not going to progress an industry if we don't highlight the issues and then try to confront them. And that doesn't have to be done in an asshole way, because critique, people, when they hear the word critique or argument, assume negative connotations. Yeah. But if you critique an argument, is the only way that you can progress dialogues and eventually change things, I think.
I 100% agree. And it's not about, it's about how you deliver or how you communicate that idea. And I understand what you mean, because it's kind of become this association where if you don't like something or you say you don't actively support something, you're a hater. And that's not, I don't believe that's the case, but I do believe there's a way to be critical of someone and be respectful at the same time. So, because I've run into this a lot where someone's like, oh, you're just a hater because, you said you didn't like such and such. And I'm like, well, if you looked at it, you'll notice that I did point out positives. I just pointed out that there were negative aspects as well. And you're allowed to do that. It's called critique. For example, someone sent me a video the other week, and I'm not going to name them. This European skater sent me a video and they went, oh, can you post it on your site? And I was like, oh, I'll give it a watch. And I watched it and I just wrote him a nice message back going, it's great to hear from you. Great to see that you're still skating, loved watching you and blah, 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 blah. I was like, I wasn't a fan of this video. I was like, there was wind noise in it. I was like, I didn't really like because see, whenever I hear wind noise and camera footage, I'm like, it just sounds cheap and terrible. And I was like, and a lot of the skating just felt like mess about homie clips.
Sure.
And I was like,
it wasn't Peruvian flute or something.
And I was like, but thanks for sending me. And he went, and the guy was actually really decent about it and went, that's really cool. Thanks for actually taking the time to give me feedback. And he's like, you raised valid points and I appreciate your honesty. Most people would not respond that way. As soon as I sent the message, I was just waiting for the guy to get in contact and be like, you're a dick. Mm-hmm. Because most people can't take criticism, but it depends on how you deliver it. If you deliver it respectfully, if the person overreacts and has a tantrum about it, that says more about them than it does about you.
I mean, I think you're the same. You're pretty pedantic, and you have in the sense that you value what words are used and why you use one word instead of another word, and that's about conveying meaning. And you'll pick up on something if someone uses one word rather than another word.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm the same, because sometimes I feel like we should have more awareness on the way that we say things and the way we present things and the words that we choose to use. Because if we're not saying things, if we don't mean what we're saying, or we don't, I mean, of course, sometimes things slip off your tongue, but if you don't try to convey your meaning in a certain way, then things are going to be misinterpreted. So it is totally the way you do it. And instead of saying, I hated that clip, you can say that I thought that clip gave me a feeling of. There's ways of delivering speech so it comes across much nicer. And instead of like a punch on someone, you kind of like sympathize with the, from the position of they're in. And that's where miscommunication comes from for me in skating a lot of the time too. It's just like I get, certain messages and stuff where you're like, what does that mean? You're like, like something so vague is said where it's like, how can I specifically, what's the specifics of that? Just something very vague can be like, I just feel there's a vagueness to
like
skate.
you need to give someone something to work with. Like you can't just make a blanket statement and expect them to improve on something. Like say for example, yeah, it's a video. You can't just go, oh, that sucked. Like you have to say the elements of it that you didn't appreciate, and then they go, all right, well, I could work on that. Whereas if you just go, that shit, or that person, like, you know, that's not constructive. That doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't help them improve.
You may as well not have said it. You're just giving bad energy. Whereas, yeah, constructive criticism actually isn't bad energy. That's actually, to be honest, helpful. If you went to see a psychologist and they told you, it sounds like your life's pretty shit, then you wouldn't, you know. But if they said to you, it seems that you have certain habits that are putting you in this direction, which may cause you to feel this way. It's just totally in the way it's said, you know. It's totally.
So I guess the logical question is, how do you move forward from that individually then to improve your own situation as a sponsored skater or as a pro skater or as someone that represents it's just Razors and Orange Wheel Company you're skating for at the moment, is that right?
Ground Control, also under Sunshine.
And Ground Control, yeah. Well, Ground Control and Razors, Sunshine, so yeah.
Yeah. So I see,
because you are representing those brands and you are representing them in all the facets that you described. You are representing them on social media, you're representing them at competitions, and you're representing them in media. So it's not like, I mean, you've just released a section that was a runaway success. So, you know, everyone's raving about Fifth Floor, and you had the most footage in it.
I would say that in the future with like skating, I would like to be more involved somehow politically in skating. I just want to do my skating as it is. I do just like, I do think that most importantly for me is just to continue skating and collaborating with the people that I want to collaborate with, and just hang, like, you know, just skating is first and foremost, like the act itself, and second to the skating is capturing the skating and making creative projects. And that's where I get most satisfaction with my skating. But I do notice that I would like to be more vocal on certain things that irritate me with skating, because I have, through skating, I've managed to get a platform where I feel like I can express myself and maybe influence certain people's, the way certain people think about skating. And that's, you know, I'm not trying to go around bitching, that's for sure. I'm not that's not at all my wish. If I was to be getting vocal or political about skating, it would be because I hope to make it better for skaters in the future. And there's a lot of things that I've met in skating that have been hard to deal with. Like coming into, if you're speaking about like being a pro skater, there's a lot of disillusionment involved in that process. And I would just like,
you're going to need to be more specific about that and what you mean, because that's you just said we need to eradicate vagueness, and then you just made an incredibly vague blanket term. So yeah. What is it that you think creates disillusion or makes people, you know, jaded on it?
It's of course some of that also, that's not any, there's no one else to completely blaming that either, because it is a thing about your own expectations that comes into it very much.
Oh, definitely.
And your own hopes and dreams that you've projected to this moment in time or something like that. But I think it's coming to a place where you feel like you have all this energy to give, and you want someone else to like jump in with you and like make it happen. But you just realize more and more that no one else is going to do it. The more I want skating, somehow, the more I want something from skating, the more I realize I have to do it myself. And that's actually a positive realization. But it's just a difficult one sometimes, because then I realize that, okay, I'm not going to have financial support or anything like that from that. So I have to then, if I'm doing it, it's off my own initiative. And then I also want to, you know, then the credit goes where the credit's due. And that's, you know, to your friends who help you do it, and to the, you know.
Just my assessment of what you're saying is you think you want to like collaborate with a brand, or you want to feel like you're working with them instead of just skating or representing just a faceless company, essentially. It kind of sounds like you want more interaction and more, you know, like, let's talk about our shared vision. Let's talk about how we can both, you know, get what we want to achieve out of this.
Definitely. I think that I have a total wish for sharing or at least it doesn't matter if we have different beliefs, because that can be worked through with communication. So I think actually more than the vision, the communication of your visions is more important. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just because it's not even an issue to me that we have differing thoughts about skating, because I think that's actually healthy, and it's, you know, some gut bacteria for like just some healthy. It's just healthy to keep things. If things get too similar,
well, yeah, if everything was the same, it would be incredibly dull and bland. Yeah,
totally. And you just need some different approaches to skating. And I think that skating's, going back to the image thing, skating's images can sometimes get too uniform. And even though you have like a rocky image, your skate company could be like a rock and roll image. But then if everyone is that rock and roll image, then it no longer has its uniqueness that it's intended on. So I just feel that
it also alienates a large part of your consumer base, because if you strongly attach yourself to one thing and go, this is what we are and this is it only, then if people are like, well, I don't identify with that, so I'm not buying your products.
I think it's more important. So in terms of principles, I think it's important to have a strong brand image, but I think that your principles are more important, because you can have people with different styles, but if it's clear that they have a shared value, like it doesn't, the vision of how to express that could be different, but if there's like a belief in brand transparency, or
Yep.
I think that's actually more of a guiding principle, like stronger, than, because that's with John. Yeah, a lot of the skaters on them seem to share similar styles of skating.
I would say they both have their own, like, I would say lots of them actually have their own kind of unique vision of skating. Like, you've got someone like Soichiro who's very stylish and meticulous, and then you've got someone like Danny who intentionally goes out of his way to try and make skating look as I don't want to say like not normal, because not what is normal, but I just mean as unconventional as what has previously gone before, if that makes sense. Like, he's very athletic, but he's also.
I love how Danny, I love how Danny brings humor into skating.
Yeah, like he tries to, you know, make his personality reflect his skating and make someone feel like they understand who he is as a person from watching his skating.
I love humor in skating. Like, I'm really a big fan of that, and I feel like actually David captured that well in Fifth Floor, like the humorous aspect of skating. But yeah, you're right. Them skates has diversity for sure, but it also makes a lot of sense to me how that they can function as a group unit and a team, because you can sense that there's a vibe that they can all get on, you know?
Yeah.
But most importantly, you can see that there's some principles that John seems to work by. And I think that when you're not a teenager anymore, and when most of the skaters at this point have jobs and vote in elections and have a politics to the way they live their life, then you look for that politics in the things you're doing too, because, you know, like, somehow you look for the ways people are doing things.
Yeah.
Because as a human being, when you develop, you just, you know, you have an identity, and you want to identify with, or you want to try maybe to align with things that are similar to the things you identify with.
Yeah, or people that just conduct themselves in a way that you respect, even if it's not the same way you do. Like, you're like, oh, I can appreciate that, or yeah, it doesn't have to be, you know, the same thing. I get it.
Just seeing that someone's doing something intentionally, it's clear that whatever them skates is doing right now is being done with intention, and I think that's a big step. What was the initial question? I've actually forgotten.
I'm pretty sure I asked how you move forward individually as a skater, but then you segued into something completely different. But yeah, so like, what, I guess the obvious question is, what do you like want to achieve? What do you have any particular goals that you want, or?
I think at some point I would like to start my own brand, maybe somehow. Don't hold me to that because I don't know how black and white it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a brand in terms of like, I don't want to start I think I just want to start my own thing.
Right.
And like that could be make my own video, or I just think I've just noticed that the more and more like I was saying to you, the more I want from skating, the more I'm realizing that it's going to if it's going to be done the way I want it, it has to come from my own initiative.
Yeah.
And I think that up until now, I've really utilized the support network and the network from skating. Like I've utilized filming with the people I want to film with and doing all these things. But I've always just been the skater, and I want to be able to expand that role and be able to also be the filmer. And I want to also be, instead of just being involved in other people's projects, I want to be the one who calls people up and says, "Hey, do you want to do a project together?" And I've got the camera, I've got the location. You know, I want to be able to kind of embody that role too at some point. So I see that as being a goal. No idea when that's going to come about, but I also would like to start to change my relationship to skating and just try to really focus on the skating for the right reasons and putting my energy into skating for the fun of it, you know, and just not wasting my time on thinking about aspects of skating that are not actually very helpful, you know. And just, you know,
What aspects of skating do you think are not helpful though? What things do you think are?
dwelling on if I'm going to be able to, what I can get from it, and dwelling on the irritants that I find in it, like some of the stuff we've discussed.
Yeah.
I'd rather just, instead of hoping that another company changes its ways, then I'd rather just make a decision to put myself in a position where I just make my own way with it, you know, kind of.
I think that's it. I think a lot of skaters get frustrated with these companies and visions that they have. And it's like, you do realize that you don't have to adopt that mindset. Like, you don't have to be, you know, negative and scathing about it. You could just, you know, if you can try and have a dialogue with them, that's the first step, because, you know, if you have a discussion, for all you know, you could resolve the issue. But if you can't, then there's nothing wrong with, you know, no one's forcing you to stay there. And I always find it really funny when, see if a skater leaves a company on their own terms and they go, this isn't working out for me anymore. Like David with Rollerblade. David was due to get a pro skate from Rollerblade. It was all going in the right trajectory. It was going in the way that most pro skaters would want. And I know that he got offered a skate, and I know they were designing it when he left, but it just wasn't what he wanted. And he left to be essentially a free agent. And then he get picked up by Valo. He did that on his own terms. But then you get other skaters who just stick it out for years and years and years. And then when they finally get dropped from the brand, or finally realize the brand has lost interest in them, and they've not got dropped, but they're just in no man's land with a company, and then they finally quit and then bitch about that company like nonstop in every interview they get. And it's like, you can blame the brand for that predicament all you want, but you also have to take some responsibility for yourself, because no one forced your hand. No one put a gun to your head and said, stay. You chose to stay, and now you're going to leave and badmouth the brand. I'm really sorry, but that's a poor reflection of you, not just the company.
It just comes across as bitter at some point as well. Yeah.
And quite childish.
And you're bitter at your own inaction. That's actually where the bitterness comes from, you knowing that there was moments you could have changed your ways, but you just stuck it out in the hope that they would read your mind or what, I don't know. But I think that I want to just be a bit more punk with skating and just be like, you know what? I fucking love that person skating. I love that person skating. Let's just fucking do something together and the rest can sort itself out. And, you know, to be honest, when it fucking comes down to it, I'm a skater and the other parts of it are important to me, but I just care about skating. And that's also vague because the act of skating isn't just the act of skating. Skating encompasses everything else about the industry.
Yeah.
But you can also choose where your focus goes in, because skating encompasses everything, the politics, the industry, the community, all those things. Yeah. But you can choose where you keep or hover your focus, you know, like you can.
Yeah, if you want to make it an artistic endeavor and just like explore all the creative aspects, like you've got people like Robbie Pitts who are, you know, making zines and stuff like that, and he's very much carving out his own vision of skating. Or you get people who turn it into like a music endeavor and, you know, create bands out of it. There's so many ways that you can utilize it. It doesn't just have to be a straight go from flow to am to pro to get a pro skate to, you know, win competitions. There's all these different paths that you can take about it, and that is, I would say, that's one of the most appealing things about the culture as a whole. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's just your way.
I just see a lot of those. I see a lot of those structures we have in place in skating these days be doing more harm than they do good. I really do. I see the flow am pro thing. It can. Like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, but at this point in time, what the fuck does that mean? Because I don't see many brands living up to their claim when they put someone on a team. But that's my expectations. But what I thought a pro skater is not what I see them being.
When it doesn't matter what category you're in, whether it's pro, am, or flow, and the only thing you're getting is free product, then there is no such thing as flow, am, and pro. It's just, you're all just sponsored.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but let's fucking pull the dictionary out for a second and look at what professional means. It means being paid for what you're doing.
True.
And why are we using that term then if we're not living up to it?
It is an outdated term for our specific pursuit. Yeah, because
I don't feel we need it. We don't need it. Like I think that if we were trying to fit ourselves into like the same categories that other sports define themselves by, like Olympic style sports and stuff, which some people propose rollerblading might be there one day, another conversation. But if we're trying
a huge proportion of Olympic athletes are not paid and do not earn a salary. A lot of them do just they are Olympic athletes, but they're not paid athletes.
No, true. That's true. A lot of them have jobs, but I just see us sometimes holding on to terms that we don't actually mean anymore. It's like, I just think it's silly to have a term unless you're going to fully live up to what that term means. So or unless you can justify what a pro is. So for example, if a team is going to have a pro rider and they're going to call their riders pro riders, then I expect that team to be able to define what a pro rider is for them.
That makes sense.
And that comes down to what my expectations are, my confusion with expectations from brands. If you're going to be called a pro skater, then I would hope that brand can define exactly what a pro skater means to you, so that you can do your job as a pro skater the best you can.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Or else I don't think it's necessary to have that term and call it something else, or at least if you're going to call them pros, but don't want to follow the standard definition of pro, then say that our version of a pro skater is this to us.
Yeah, just as long as there's clarity and transparency, and you're like, this is what we're doing, and this is what it means. Yeah.
Yeah, not saying that you're a pro rider and hoping that people imagine that you're living the luxury life and it's just cocaine and champagne and, like, you know.
Is that what you consider luxury?
Yeah. What?
Illegal substances and bubbles. I think you just gave people an insight into your personality there. Let's move swiftly on from that. I've got a very random question that has nothing to do with what we've been talking about for the last half hour, but it just sprung into my mind. You've lived in Copenhagen for years. Jonas Hansen is from Copenhagen and has filmed sections with pretty much everyone you hang out with, but you two have never worked together on anything. In fact, you've never even had a single clip in a Jonas Hansen project. Why is that?
Good question.
Do you guys ever hang out? Like, you must hang out because he's friends with David and Quinny.
Yeah, I don't see Jonas too often. We see each other at the skate park sometimes or at certain sessions. Right. Jonas hangs around a lot with Malte and stuff like that.
But
and
you're friends with Malte, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm friends with Malte. But it just somehow we don't. It's not for any reason, but we just don't skate together that often. And when we do, it's fun. But it's just it's a timing thing that we just don't end up at the same sessions. You know, we're not like, in a way, they have their own little crew that skates together regularly, but it's not like a closed crew. Anyone can go there, but they're just like hang out often because that's how it goes.
No, I know what you mean. You get different groups in the same city. It doesn't mean they don't like each other. It's just, you know, different schedules or different like things that you want to skate, and it just naturally happens. I get it.
A schedule thing, it can be. I've quite often had like morning sessions with Jonas because he skates in daytime often when I'm working or something. I think I gotta say the last video Jonas made was really great. Everyday Shuttle.
Yep.
I thought that was one of his favorite things. My favorite things he's ever done. I thought it was just done in a really nice way, and it was nice to see clips of Jonas in there too. And it was good timing. Like, it came out a week before we dropped Fifth Floor, so like Copenhagen got a double.
This is the scene. This is the scene in Europe right now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think at one point I said to Jonas, I expressed interest for wanting to do something with him, but it was just at the time when he just finished the Elite series with that, and like he needed a break from filming because he'd done many of those. He'd done one with Richie. He'd done one with Quinny.
Plus, and a lot of traveling and, a lot of expense. And I imagine it was just a lot of work on his part. So he probably just was like, I need a break.
Totally, but I think that's possibly there's something there in the future with.
I think you guys could work well together. I think that's like a conversation worth having with him, because it would be interesting to see how he portrays your approach to skating, because it is very much like, you go through this process, and I don't think other skaters that he's featured before do that. Like Quinny, for example, I've hung about with Quinny before and filmed sections with him, and he's very much like, he goes somewhere and it's like bang, 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 and just rattles them out. And I think the approach you would have with Jonas would be a lot different to a skater like that.
Gotta say, Quinny, like, I think through skating together, all of us, we've all started to influence each other's, approaches and stuff. And I see Quinny playing around on spots. It's really fun.
Oh, it really annoys me that people have just never fully experienced what it is he's capable of. Like,
I seen the guy, Skate Club, Instagram.
Yeah.
He posted a Quinny clip from the video saying something like he'd checked out Quinny's clips years ago, and he was a rail skater, so he moved on because that's not what he was into at the time. And I was just like, wow, you've been sleeping on him then, because Quinny's been amazing.
Yeah, and his wheel scene section alone, I think he's only got not that many of the clips are rails. A lot of them are weird, like gaps or weird grind to things or weird transfers, or his Elite series section, I think, is so incredibly slept on. There are tricks in there that are just so the one where he does a 270 back royale up a ledge, and then the ledge goes 90 degrees, and he manages to fish brain the ledge going 90 degrees. And I'm like, that shouldn't be possible. Why is no one talking about this? And no one mentioned it. And there's other tricks like that in that section, and I just felt like it was criminally overlooked.
The sit-down topsail on that big curved ledge.
Yeah, the really low. People focused on that because it's a spectacle. But it's like, do you know how hard and how much control that takes to do that? And it's not like he's waving about. Like, he he locks into it and just sits on it and rides it out to the end. And
That's
yeah,
what
there's
I take to my work. So I often, like, if I'm having a little break, go over and check it out, and it's just like, it's a crazy trick.
yeah.
Much love to Quinny. He's my Scottish brother here in Copenhagen.
He's definitely one of my favorites that we've produced. Actually, I think he might be my favorite that we've produced. He is, yeah. I would say Quinny's probably my favorite Scottish skater that we've ever had.
But we were speaking about something else there. But yeah, Jonas. Maybe I will have to get in touch with Jonas.
Say, hey, I'm available. I'm available.
This Jonas.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be quite cool. So what other future plans do you have? What else is coming up, or is there going to be another like Haitian trip, or has there been any discussion of doing that again, or no?
No, not for now. I think generally speaking, like the Corona has obviously paused a lot of travel and thought like future plans with traveling, because you don't know the way it's going to pan out.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are just waiting until things open before making any decisions with that. And to be honest, I've not been thinking about anything outside of my bubble, like in Copenhagen bubble, just because I actually am enjoying the pause to focus on some of the stuff that I neglect sometimes, like there's a lot of things that I think I don't give myself the time to focus on. And in the last half year, I've been trying to cultivate a more patient approach to the things I want to do, and try to think about some of the thoughts that I push to the back sometimes, try to bring them forward and try to consider what sort of things I want to try achieve that aren't skating. Because skating, I've just come to a conclusion that skating is always going to be there for me, no matter what position I'm in my life. Skating will actually follow me like a shadow. Skating like is my shadow. It's just like I can't cut it away from me. It's just like, so instead of worrying about where my skating is going to go, I actually want to shift it so I trust my skating and then just start focusing on some of the other things I want to achieve. Because I don't want to get to the age of 28 and feel that, wake up from a skating dream and be like, oh, the world doesn't look as nice as I thought it did when skating's not in the picture, and I want to actually, instead of mourning some sort of lost dream, I want to try to meet myself halfway and try things and bring, there's no reason why skating should exclude you being able to do other things in your life.
Yeah,
because
you want to be in a healthy position where you have other things going for you.
Yeah, and I think that actually just is only going to enrich your skating to have something else to balance it off of. And because then when you don't feel the motivation for skating, you reflect the light onto the other thing, and just, inevitably at some point in my life, other things will come. There'll be other things come into play that I can't foresee right now, and they might take some of my attention that's usually for skating, and I think I want to just enjoy skating for what it is right now and try to be productive. But I also want to just not be scared to try new things, because I think for a long time I've felt a little bit all or nothing with skating, and felt like if I did something else, it would take me away from skating. And I've not pursued any sort of further education since I left school. I've just been working, and then I save up money and I put the money into skate projects. And I think I've been scared at the idea of losing skating, but I've realistically don't feel that anymore. I feel like I can't lose skating, because if I could have, it would have got away at this point. I've got through the tough periods that everyone else speaks about. I've got through the puberty, the pubescent period and skating stayed with me through it all. So,
you thought that was the tough period? You've not seen it yet.
What's the next one?
The next one's when your body just doesn't necessarily
want it anymore.
It's not that it doesn't want it. Your mind wants it, and you can force your body to do it, but it's perhaps not as limber or compatible, or doesn't recover as quickly. Like, I got a wrist injury in August, and I can't do a single press up.
Shit.
And it's
I
not
mean,
it's not broken, and it's not strained, and you can't get surgery on it. And obviously you can't go to your GP because coronavirus, but they're not going to operate on something that's not broken.
okay. I mean, I don't have a wrist injury and I can do 5, so I don't know if
So
you're that.
yeah, like let's just say before the rest of I was capable of many more than now it just won't take the weight. So yeah. But
Well, I feel like I could continue speaking, but I think if anyone's lasted this long, then hats off to them. I think we
no, what I want to know is, you said you've got other things you want to achieve or other goals you have in life. So what I want to know is, what are your other, let's end it out with, what are your other goals or other things you want to achieve in life?
Oh, they're
'Cause
not
you must have things that you want, or things that you would like.
they're not totally clear objectives. I'm only 23, but I have a feeling that at some point I want to have kids.
Okay.
So that's in the future. I see that I sometimes get worried or have this fear that, like, if I do that, then I won't be able to do that. And then if I do that, I might become that kind of person, and that kind of person can't be that kind of person for another person. All these like complex thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that those thoughts can deceive you too, because it's not true. You are who you are, and you'll find a way to make it work, and fill in the blanks or whatever. But I just want to. But that's who knows about that. That's I just put that thought into my 30s.
Yeah. Like I had my daughter when I was in my, like, already past 30. Yeah. So
There's a box in my head marked 30, and I've just put that thought in there. And then for the meantime, like, let's put it in more realistic, like more
immediate.
immediate future.
Yeah.
Then I've just applied to hopefully go to this like 3-month art school in Iceland,
Okay.
and I hope to be able to go to that, and it would just be like a break for me to kind of immerse myself in something creative that isn't skating.
Well,
And
if you go to Reykjavik, they've got a skate park.
no, it's not in Reykjavik. It's in a small town called Seyðisfjord.
Right. Okay.
I would like to. I want to wiggle about and just like explore and end up in something really bizarre and weird. I want to do
I
something
mean,
crazy.
you always have, and you always will. That's one thing that is a certainty with you. You will always end up in something bizarre and weird. That's your magnet. That's what you gravitate towards.
Yeah, so I think I just want to end. I don't want to totally rock the boat and end up feeling like, whoa, this is too much. But at the same time, I do want to try new things, and I could see myself wanting to end up in some random job in some creative industry, or in Denmark has so much like there's a lot of support for artistic stuff in Denmark.
Yeah.
And I just want to have a stab at trying to find an interesting career at some point. I don't have an education, so for me it's just like putting my hands out in the dark and feeling around and hopefully finding something that I like.
Yeah, education isn't always the answer for everyone. I think the most important thing to have is ideas. If you've got ideas, then they can take you into fascinating places.
I want to develop my willpower. I want to be able to kick myself harder up the ass, and I want it's just like stuff like that.
All right.
So that's about it for now, I guess. I want to get better at cooking. I love cooking, and I want to keep on making nice meals. I want to definitely should be reading. I would like to read more books. I haven't read a book in like a year.
What are all those books to the right?
That's diaries.
Ah, right. Okay.
Or just like random selection of things I draw in and stuff. Like some.
Okay.
The book of life. We're calling this one.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, that's I guess that's me for now.
I think that's a positive thing to leave things off.
I'm gonna flash the Haitian logo since it's sitting next to me.
Gotta be done. Bina's in India right now, isn't he? Is that right?
No. That was what I forgot to say when you asked about future Haitian projects. Bina's now been traveling for 8 years or something.
Yeah.
And he finally, I think, hit the point where he wants some stability and like a place to call home. So I think he's right now he's just renting out a place in Portland.
Okay.
So I think he's enjoying the rest period. But yeah,
He has
I think
done a lot of
he also
traveling.
told
So
me that he accepts that restlessness will always be a part of his DNA. So
yeah.
let's not say that Bina's settling in Portland forever. I don't think that's what it is.
I mean, I don't think anyone can say that for certain. Yeah.
No.
Well, it's the afternoon there, so you've got the rest of the day to enjoy. Thank you very much for taking the time to do it. I'm sure you're going to get a ton more messages about the fifth floor by people saying how much they've loved it. And yeah, hopefully it won't be 3 years before we see another section from you. But yeah, looking forward to it.
I want to say before I go, just thank you to everyone that's got in touch about Fifth Floor. I really appreciate it, and it like warms my heart and makes it all the more worth it to make stuff like this. And we're all very appreciative of it. Like I've spoke to the other guys and stuff, and it's amazing the response. And yeah, that would probably be another thing I'd put into my goals for the future that I think I want to follow up with something. So
I think you definitely should follow up with something. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I've got my magician's hat and I'll try to pull something out.
You do that. Until then, though.
Dave, thanks for the chat. It was good to speak with you.
I'm sure we'll have a pedantic meeting of minds over DM, but where we just discuss various elements that we have opposing views on, as we usually do. So until then,
like happiness and so.
Yeah.
Well, I think that give spit on Scotland for me or something. Give it a pat on the back. Say hi to Scotland.
Well, I'm just about to go and meet Elliot, and Elliot was saying to say hello. So yeah.
Nice one. Have a good time. Take care, Dave.
You too. Speak soon.
Goodbye, viewers.